can hear me well. So we're going to start with a basic flat wash, okay? So I'm just going to do some little squares of paint. Now flat washes can be tricky. So I'm just going to pick up some of this wonderful phthalo blue into my puddle. I want a kind of medium consistency, so not too watery, not too creamy, so it should be flowing on your palette. And we're simply going to paint a square. Now as you lift your brush, do you notice that bead of paint? Pick up that bead and come back the other way and just keep going. The secret to a nice even flat wash is that your brush is nicely loaded, it's nice and wet, and your paint's not too creamy. So we can keep going until that bead disappears, that little bead at the corner when you lift your brush. We've got a wonderful flat wash. So let me tell you what can go wrong with a flat wash. If you just come in with your brush into your very creamy paint, it doesn't flow, you'll end up with streaks. You can see the streaks from the brush where I've not used enough water. Okay, so that's what can go wrong. It's very patchy and it's not going to settle back down. You're going to keep these streaks in your colour. So to stop that, remember you need a nice loose puddle. A nice loose puddle, and that way we get that bead. We know our brush is wet enough. We're just working onto dry paper, and you get that lovely even coverage. So that's what to do, and that's what not to do, which is really important. So let's say we're going to do a lovely sky, and we want the sky darker at the top and lighter at the bottom. So we're going to start in the same way. Load up our brush with this wonderful blue. I'm just going to move my palette slightly over. I'm left-handed, so the palette's in the way. And we're going to start at the top, and this time we're going to create a variegated wash. So we're coming down so far. Then I want you to clean your brush out. And what's really important is that before you go back to your painting, that you get rid of the excess water from your brush, and then start a little way down, just short of where you stopped, apply some water, and then work back up and into your colour, and keep walking down, and you're fading that colour out. So we get this lovely transition from dark to light, and if you want to, you're able to go back into that darker area and walk your brush down again. Now what's important here is that you don't let that line dry, and let me show you another thing that can go wrong. So we're going to start the sky in the same way. We'll make it a bit bigger this time. Walking that brush across, we clean our brush, we pick up fresh water, we forget to start down here, and we push our brush straight down next to the blue. And what can happen, it's not happening to me today, typical, is that your water pushes back up into your sky. Can you see what's happening here? The water is going back up into the sky, and we're getting a bloom. And that's purely because we forgot to dab our brush on our paper to get rid of the extra water. Now when you're using your tissue and you're getting rid of extra water, make sure you push your brush down and you get the barrel of the brush, the thicker hairs, because that's where the water's held. Now look at this. The other thing that you can do is wait too long, and you're playing around with your first piece of painting. Let's do this one again. So we've played with this one, and then we come in with our wet brush and we try and fade it down, and you're going to end up with a crispy line because that water, that paint has dried into the paper, and you're going to get this line, which is really hard to get rid of. With practice you can, but each time I'm creating a line. So here, as I'm trying to smooth it out, the only way is to go all the way back up to the top. So make sure when you're doing your variegated washes that you start with a blot your brush and come back up towards your paint, and then allow the paint to flow. What you can also do if you're working on a board like I am is prop your board, put a roll of sellotape or something to raise your board, and that will help the paint flow down. I've lost my brush now. So let's recap. A wonderful flat wash using a nice watery mix, not too watery so it's pow, unless that's what you want, and you'll get this lovely, it'll dry beautiful and even. If your paint is too thick, you'll end up with streaks. So we'll do another variegated wash, but this time we're going to introduce two colours. So I'm going to pick up some magenta and create another puddle over here. So you want it kind of like a milk consistency, not tea, not Ribena, a little bit thicker, unless you want your colour very pale. The more water you use, the weaker the colour. So we're going to go again, starting with our blue at the top, coming down, clean the brush, get rid of the excess water and fade it out. Just pick up some of that colour, it's going to follow the water. And then I'm going to do something like a sunset. So I'm going to come in with my pink at the bottom here. Let me just flatten my board again, I've got it raised. Bring that pink in, clean your brush out, remember to blot, and then start in the water, come back down to the pink until you touch into the pink, and you'll see it burst out into the water. Watercolour's very obedient. I'm just going to carry on walking this blue down to meet the pink. And we've got our wonderful sunset sky. Now something else you can do, guys, is if you're working on a really big sky and you're worried about your paper drying out, is you can pre-wet the paper. So this time we're going to do the same thing again, but we're going to wet the paper with water first, so the paint has immediately got something to flow into. And we're going to try the same again. Bearing in mind, because we have water on the page, your colour is going to be somewhat lighter. So we're going to come across the top and stop, clean our brush and blot. And come into that water and creep back up into our blue and walk it back down again. This is really good, as I say, if you're working on a big area and you're worried about your paper drying out. It's the same with the pink, coming into the bottom, clean the brush out and walk it, go back into the pink and just walk it up. And where the colours meet, you're going to get a lovely purple hue, very light purple. So very similar results. My preferred way, I don't really have one. I'd say when I'm working on large skies that I would go for wetting the paper first. So let me show you this in action. Okay. And looking at the reference picture, We don't need to worry about the masts at this stage because they're all going to be dark, so we can paint over those. However, the boat we're going to need to avoid. So I'm going to start wetting the paper down to the horizon line with clean water. Just a nice coating of water. You don't want it saturated, just nicely coated. Down to that horizon, across the masts, nice and even. And then we're going to build our sky. So starting with the purple at the top, nice and light. That's quite strong, so I'm going to spread that out. I don't want my sky that dark. Walking down. Now what you can also do is wedge a roll of tape or something under your board. I want that a little bit more blue. So in I go again and start walking that colour down. Look at the position on the mast on the reference picture. Your clues are there. Okay, keep your movements nice and steady as you go side to side, and then into my orange tones, which kind of come halfway down the mast. Wet into wet, just taking this up. Now as I get closer to the purple tone, I'm going to just use water on my brush and take this colour here and walk it up. I don't want that meeting of colours to be too strong. Fabulous. And then going down into our pink. Now obviously we don't want stripes, so we're trying to work back up into that yellow so we get that mingling happen, and then back into our purple above the horizon and walk it slightly into the pink. I'm not even too worried about my land. I've gone slightly over it. There we go. And because you're tilting the board as well, some of those colours will run together naturally. There's a couple of areas I've missed at the side. Be careful if you go back with your brush not to have your brush too wet, or you could end up with a nasty back run. So I'm just tidying that up. And we have our beautiful dreamy sky.